Chapter 44. Confession in the Dark. Freya locks up, her eyes wide after Rory's declaration to her. The confession of his so honest and real. The raw emotion in them knocks the wind out of her. He hinted around his feelings for her before, but they were centered around how he felt about her in the past. There is no doubt in how he feels about her now, in her human form still. He laid it out, showcased his heart on his sleeve, without knowing if she would crush it in mere moments. He's so close to her, their legs brushing against each other. Freya's insides melt. Her mouth slightly parts in surprise, her heartbeat increases. A sound she knows he can sense. She can't think of words, of how to convey the feeling she's tried to squander for him and failed. He studies her face, her expression. Those emerald eyes searching for an answer. She isn't ready to give one yet. She closes her mouth and looks away, unable to handle the intensity of his stare. Knowing she'll give herself away, give away the feelings that she's hidden, if she continues looking into his eyes. He resigns slightly, his face hardening. My feelings are my own. You don't have to return them for you to belong in the fairy realm. You can go where you choose. Be with who you choose. The last words catch and his jaw clenches. An image of Merlin flashes through her mind, and she's sure he makes an appearance in Rory's as well. She knows she won't be going anywhere else, that she won't be loving anyone else. Heat courses through her. Embarrassment, shock, and a burning desire to be closer to him mixed together. Rory, of all people. She almost laughs out loud. She suppresses it, but an incredulous smile slips through the wall she drew around her emotions. Rory notices the change in her demeanor, his brows furrowing, once again searching her eyes that are now on him. Confusion splashes on his face, and Freya realizes she has to say something. Give an excuse, a reason for her smile. She tries to muffle the smile, the bubbling in her as her feelings course through her in full force, amplified by their proximity to each other. She can't control it. After all of this, hating him, not trusting him, blaming him, stubbornly recoiling at every flirtatious smirk and wink he gave her. After kissing his best friend, she's been falling for Rory. She made an oath all those years ago to find him and marry him, knowing without a shadow of a doubt that he was who she wanted to spend eternity with. It seems Freya knew her better than she knew herself, that even without her memories of their past, Freya still wants him. The realization resonates in her mind. She opens her mouth to say the words she knows Rory isn't expecting. To choose. Her mouth snaps shut, unable to bring them out. To tell him how she feels. She can handle Aaron, can handle the tree of curated. But opening her heart for Rory, admitting her feelings, that is terrifying. Why are you making that face? Rory finally asks, his eyes still trying to unlock the expression. No hint of anger in his tone, but surprise. Curiosity. He truly doesn't know. Freya tries once again to regain her normal posture. Return to how she was before she started thinking of him. She straightens her shoulders and dampens the emotion in her eyes, though her lips continue to tug upward. She pauses, remembering that she can't lie to him. She doesn't have an excuse. Her cheeks flush. Rory raises an eyebrow. I don't know if I've ever seen you this speechless. His face skeptical then shifts, sliding easily into the mischievous smirk that she has grown so accustomed to. His eyes resemble a devil's playfulness as he says, now what would you be thinking about to squirm that much? What can't you tell me? She knows the rosy hue splashed across her cheeks deepens. She holds her head high, not backing away. Annoyance replaces the surprise. That of all people, him. It had to be him. The person that knows better than anyone how to get under skin. It's nothing you need to know about. She holds his gaze. A challenge, waiting to see if he'll be the first to back down. He leans back on the couch, shifting slightly closer to her. His leg fully presses against hers. She swallows, not sure of what might happen between the two of them. In this castle. Alone. Rory cocks his head. How do you feel about me, Freya? Her heart stills. A direct question. If she doesn't answer, he'll know. If she lies, he'll know. There's no way to maneuver her way out of this. The words rise to her lips, resting there, knowing that everything will change once she says them. The tension between them is palpable with the awareness of being alone with no one else around. His eyes follow the curve of her lips, waiting for her answer. I feel. She pauses and the air between them thickens. She can't do it. I feel like I'm ready for bed. Can you show me to my room? She keeps her chin high, waiting for his response, wondering if he can sense the cowardice in her, of what she's unable to express out loud. Rory's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger but in amusement. A knowing smile on his lips, a guess as to why the question has made her squirm, why she can't answer it. Her non-answer was a clear giveaway. She could have easily said she felt nothing, that she still liked Merlin, that she didn't want anything between them. But she didn't, and he knows that. He stretches up from the couch and knocks back the remnants floating in his glass of wine. She does the same. Surveying her as she stands, he smirks. I would consider a bath as well. Again she asks herself, why does it have to be him? She matches his gaze. You look worse than me. An amused laugh ruptures from his lips, and together, they wind their way through the castle. Midway, Freya asks, can I have a different bedroom than the one from last time? She doesn't want to remember the fear she had the first night here. She's grateful he didn't ask further questions as to why, instead simply nodding and leading her to a different bedroom. As they walk, anticipation rises in her, an unsettling longing for him that grows with each step, with each glance at her. She reins in the wanting, the yearning for his touch. He stops, leaning against an oak door. You can stay here tonight. His bright eyes flick to a door across from it. That's my room if you need anything. His voice is deeper with the last statement. An invitation, Freya realizes. She lingers at the doorknob, attempting to muster the courage to tell him of her feelings, of not wanting to be alone, to show any sign of the desire that courses through her. But the fear remains stronger, and with a last glance at him and his bedroom door, she opens hers. Good night, Rory. The words are barely out before she shut the door behind her and pressed her back against it, listening to see if he waits outside. She moves only when she hears his bedroom door shut. Peeling off her clothes, she wades into the warm bath, trying to calm her thoughts. When the grime and dirt finally wash away, she curls into the warm bed of her new room. In the darkness, she's able to calm herself long enough to drift off to sleep. And into a dream, a memory. The tree of curated before her, the red mist dripping from it. Her parents, her face self isn't there. This must be a memory given to her by the tree, not one of her own. She looks around in her disembodied state, trying to make sense of the importance of the dream. That's when she sees the source of the red mist that had snapped the tree in two, now turning to black flames that rage around the entire clearing. Freya can sense the rage from the magic, mixing with suffocating grief. The mist subsides enough to see the one who broke the link. In the expanse of the clearing, she sees her. A glinting ruby amulet fastened around her neck. Her eyes pure steel, staring at the tree with a curled lip, anger resonating through her. Not the sapphire Freya's grown accustomed to, but a burning crimson. Rian. Freya bolts out of bed, sweat dripping down her neck. Her heartbeat is unable to slow, unable to catch her breath. She gasps for air. Rian. This whole time it was her. All of the scheming, the planning. Rian knew the entire time. She possesses the amulet, the life source to the fairy realm, that her and Freya's closest friends will be searching for. Freya can't breathe, can't gasp in the breath she needs. She clutches her chest, trying to force calm through her. Impossible. Not when her friends are with Rian. Not when their entire plan crumbles before her. Freya barely notices her bedroom door open, the candlelight wafting through from the hallway. Only pulled away from the thoughts, the dread when she feels Rory's calloused hand on her shoulder, soothing her, his eyes wild with worry. Freya, you're safe. You're all right, it was a dream, Rory soothes. But she isn't safe, neither is he. The realms aren't safe. She doesn't respond right away, still desperately trying to calm her breathing, and Rory stays, pulling her in his arms for comfort once again. And again she lets him. Working through the fear, the rage she felt from Rian, the death of the tree. All of it, until she's ready to speak. In the dark, with no candlelight or moon to light the room, Freya tells Rory what she saw. She tells him of Rian, that it's been her the entire time. He doesn't say a word as she peeks, listening intently to every word. When she's finished, Rory keeps his arms firmly around her, his voice soft but with a cutting edge underneath. With Merlin there, she won't hurt them. He won't let that happen. We know where the other amulet is, and once we retrieve the other, we'll be a step ahead of her. His hand forms comforting swirls on her back, despite it being taut with his own anger. Freya shifts, turning to him, to comfort him this time from the inability to be there to protect his friends. She can hardly see his face in the dark, only feeling his rigid body. Stay, she whispers. Stay with me tonight. They move together, laying down under the sheets. No words between them, letting their touch comfort each other. Freya allows herself to curl into him, her back pressed against his chest, his arms strong around her. Despite the fear at that moment, Freya feels safe. In the cover of darkness, unsure if he is awake or drifting into sleep, Freya does what she's wanted to do since he shielded her from Aaron. She finds him in the darkness and presses her lips softly against his. He stills at the touch, the caress of the kiss, and then his mouth moves on her with a fierceness that evokes a new fire in her. Freya angles her body further into him, feeling the heat of his, and pushes further against him. She pulls away long enough to whisper, "At the end I want to be by your side as well." Chapter 45. A familiar assistance. Freya woke up still entwined in Rory's arms, his chest rising and falling with his breath, blanketed in the glimmer of candlelight that Rory ignited last night. She studies his peaceful face, his parted lips. Her cheeks flush, thinking of what occurred between them in the dark. Their mouths were hungry for each other from the moment of Freya's first kiss. His mouth, his body was new territory for her as she didn't remember the taste and feel of him. But Rory. He knew her well. It was clear in every kiss, every touch across her body as they explored each other. Rising and falling in sync, as he slipped his lips to her neck. She reached her arms around him, digging her fingers into his hair, his shoulders, any scrap of flesh that was free until she began tugging his shirt from him. The passion in her took her by surprise, the longing for him. The desire that had been blooming in her as her feelings grew. Secretly harboring the fact that she thought he was attractive from the moment she saw him. But what she felt for him now was more than simple attraction. A deeper yearning for him. To be close to him. As she pressed herself further into his touch, the only thing she wished was different was for light, to see him. To take him in fully. It seemed like he could read her thoughts as the candles around the room blazed. His muscled chest there for her to see. His hair sliding around his eyes, staring into hers. The wanting, the desire for each other gave her a moment to look at him before her lips were reaching for him again. Finding their way across his skin, his neck, his chest. A moan slipped from his mouth, vibrating against her neck, and Freya let out a similar sound in response. They needed more, she needed more, as she wrapped her legs around him. But he took his time, enjoying every inch of her, savoring every moment until it was too much, and Freya beckoned him with her hips, grinding against him in a silent plea. To be part of him, to feel him. He gave her a fierce, wicked grin as he gave her what she wanted, and their bodies moved as one until they released at the same time. He left the candles blazing, his eyes sweeping over her naked body before he collapsed into the sheets next to her. She rested her head on his chest, a different kind of intimacy between them, laying vulnerable next to each other. Exhaustion from the release swept through her. Before she drifted to sleep, she heard a low murmur from Rory. "I am lucky to be yours, Freya." Freya wrapped herself further into him. Her head nestled against his chest where she whispered back, not sure if she said it out loud or remained as a thought, "Thank you for finding me." He brushed his lips against her forehead as a dreamless sleep overtook her. His eyes flutter awake, as if he could feel Freya's eyes on him, like he could sense the thoughts of the night before running through her hand. He trails a hand over her waist, lighting grazing up and down her side. "Good morning." Rory smiles, amusement twinkling in his eyes, happiness swimming in the emeralds. Freya can't help the smile on her own lips. "Good morning," she repeats, slightly off guard of what to say, of how to be in the aftermath of their night, of her confession. "As much as I would love to spend all day in bed with you." Rory trails off, moving his grazing hand from her hip to her cheek, sliding a fallen strand of hair behind her ear. He kisses her softly and Freya leans into it, lingering for more. A considerable amount of restraint on his part pulls away. "We have a portal to get through." The first step in the human realm was unexpectedly hard for Freya. Apprehension flooded her, thinking of returning to her old home, making her pause in front of the portal. A twinge of fear at not knowing how much time has passed, what the reaction was to her leaving, how it would feel to step inside the life she once lived for a fleeting moment. Rory had waited patiently for Freya to decide to take that first step. Now they stand in the bask of cold sunlight, a whisper of white snow on the ground, a sign that time had moved forward. It was summer when she was last there. Standing at the edge of the garden, Merlin had cast his glamour upon the night she left the human realm. She shivers against the biting cold and wraps the thick cloak around her, pulling the hood over her head, savoring the warmth. Despite her initial laughter at the idea of wearing cloaks due to Rory not possessing the same talent of casting allures like Merlin, they had to resign to a more obvious state of disguise. Freya feels strange to be back. The initial nerves sliding away, replaced by a sense of comfort. She's accustomed to the ways of the human realm, the simpleness of it. In that, a hollowness swells. That even in the familiarity, Freya knows she doesn't belong there. Perhaps that emptiness had always lingered in her. Rory wraps his hand around hers, and Freya is thankful for the grounding touch. We don't have very long, his eyes filled with determination, and it's enough for Freya to push past the mixture of emotions swirling inside her. Right. She looks toward the opposite end of the garden, the pathway leading to town, letting a breath release from her. No time for talking to girls in cafes then, Freya quips, eyeing Rory. A nod to the first time he spoke to her. At least the first time Freya remembers. He flashes a grin. No time indeed. They walk at brisk but unassuming speed, hand in hand through the human realm. As they reach the center of town, they're met with odd stares from the humans they pass, themselves bundled in clothes against the cold, but nothing like the cloaks Freya and Rory wear. The one in which Freya makes sure to keep her face hidden behind the shadow of the dark hood draped over her head. Rory leans to her ear, surprise in his tone. Why are they staring at us? She smiles, the first one since entering the realm. This isn't exactly normal human attire. Even in the simple design of midnight black with silver thread lacing through it, the clothing stands out. If Freya was one of them idly passing by on the streets, she would have gawked as well. Is all Rory responds. You don't know the human realm very well, do you? Freya teases. He chuckles. I suppose you'll take the lead on this one. And she does, twisting them through the narrow streets, purposefully avoiding the row of shops that the cafe she once worked at is on, until they reach her old home. The small apartment, the one room she lived in for years. It's smaller than she remembered, possibly due to growing accustomed to the castle bedrooms that are twice the size of her entire apartment. She reaches the front and peers through the window. Her heart stills. The apartment is completely empty. No furniture, no remnants of her life there. Completely void of it, as if she was never there to begin with. The emptiness crushes through her. She shouldn't have been surprised with the amount of time that has passed. But still, the sense of her being easily forgotten makes her heart heavy. Rory stands behind her, looking through the windows as well. He glances at her and strokes a thumb over the back of her hand. She hides her expression in the shadow of the cloak, briefly thankful for the disguise, if only to hide the tears swelling in her eyes. It feels silly to Freya to cry over such a thing, but she lets herself feel the emotion for a brief moment before reining it in. They were on a mission. They need this amulet, and if her apartment is cleared out, it will only make it harder to locate it. Should we try going inside? Rory asks gently. Freya remembers where she kept the amulet, a jewelry box that sat upon her desk. Neither of them are there anymore. Defeat roars through her. They don't have long until they need to be back at the portal. An hour at most. We can try, but she chews on her lip. The thought of failure crashing around her. Where I kept it, it's not here. Rory picks up on her increasing anxiety. It won't hurt to try. She nods and tries the door handle. Locked. She tries it again more forcefully. The door doesn't budge. Rory steps in, placing his hands around the door and pushes. The door opens with ease. The smugness on Rory's face, amplified for Freya's own benefit, is enough to lighten her fears. Freya pulls back the hood as she steps inside, rolling her eyes. Show off. Rory responds with a chuckle. The amusement fades quickly when they cross the door shut behind them. The smell of dust hit her nose immediately, as if no one had entered the apartment in a long time, feeling like an empty tomb. Freya focuses on breathing as she moves further inside. Thinking only of the amulet, she scans the empty floors, the lack of everything she owned. Grief for the life she lived, the one she never truly got to say goodbye to other than when she accepted the oath. She forces herself to be strong, to hold herself together, at least for the hour they have to search. Both of them scour the place, looking in every nook and cranny. Rory even lifts the floorboards. Freya silently counts down the minutes until they have to be back to the portal. With each passing second, their search deems to be more and more fruitless. Rory leans up from the floorboard he's been searching. Do you know where they would have taken your things? Freya shakes her head. I don't. No one has left the town. The way I did. Rory winces at the implication. She continues, he words tight. We don't have much time. Just as she says this, a slight thud occurs near the window. Out of the corner of her eye, Freya senses a familiar presence, one that leaped in and out of the windows frequently. Flora purrs, striding to Freya, an object clasped in her mouth, gleaming and bright. The emerald amulet hangs from her mouth. Freya nearly cries with joy, picking up Flora and holding her close. The amulet calls out to Freya, beckoning her as she wraps her hands around it and pulls it over her neck. She feels the raw power stirring inside the stone on her skin. Freya looks to Rory in triumph, then back to Flora. Her familiar suspicion in her voice, Freya notes. We should have just let you bring it to us. Flora looks up at her, innocently. So much emotion for a cat. So much in her that Freya never noticed. Rory smirks. True, but then we wouldn't have had our night together. To both of their surprise, Flora purrs as if that was exactly why she let them go on their expedition. Rory grinsuider, wikt kat. With Flora still in Freya's arms, they leave the apartment and rush through town, ignoring the strange looks of passers-by, barely making it to the portal in time. They step through and are slammed back into the in-between. Power ripples around Rory and the glow of the portal changes, swirling into itself and then back open. Wasting no time, they cross over into the fairy realm. The moment Freya's feet hit the grassy floor of the meadow covered in sunlight, a heavy weight pulls at her. As if the realm is reminding her of something she's forgotten. She looks at Rory and his expression shows that he feels the same presence. Before Freya can ask what the sensation is, Rory announces, looks like the realm is ready for us to make good on our oath. Chapter 46, Feigned Deception. I didn't think it would be so soon, is all Freya could manage to say. They don't have the luxury to spend time on getting married. Neither did I, Rory replies with his eyebrows furrowed. What do we do? Freya asks, slightly breathless. She isn't sure what is required of them to be married, what laws are in place for fey marriages. After last night, after recognizing her feelings for him, the thought of marriage to Rory wasn't as terrifying as it once was. But she still wanted more time together before it. Of just them. Silently she curses at the realm, at the tree of curated. She swears she can sense amused laughter from the realm that snakes up her spine. The glow of the amulet around her neck brightens, connecting to the new realm it's in. They need to hurry, with the life source taken from the human realm. It could be detrimental for all of the humans if it's not returned to the tree or to the realm in which it came from. Rory affirms, we have to move fast. First we fix the tree. Then we marry. You remember the plan. The plan they discussed that morning before entering the human realm, of how to play Rianne. To act aloof like Freya's dream never happened. Both she and Rory assumed that Rianne wouldn't have admitted to possessing the twin amulet to the others. Freya had noticed a chain around Rianne's neck, and hoped it was indeed the amulet. She hopes Merlin, Daniel and Lily are alright. That nothing went awry while they were gone. That Rianne didn't turn on them. Though Freya wouldn't be surprised if she did. Her blood boils at the thought, at Rianne lying to them for this long. At Rianne acting like Freya was the one to break the link. Maybe she helped plant that lie long ago to cover her tracks. And besides that, Rianne's eyes in the memory. They weren't the sapphire one she now donned, but crimson. When she told Rory of that part, he went still, unsure of what it meant. Garnet eyes were a power only in his family, the bloodline of them ending with him because he had green eyes. One of the main factors that caused Aaron's rage. I remember. Freya nods in confirmation. She clings Flora tightly to her chest as Rory swoops her up in his arms. A deeper part of her, untouched by the rage and stress, relishes his taut arms against her body and she leans into him as they fly over the meadow and head toward the cave. Freya lets herself enjoy the wind whipping around her cheeks, rejuvenating her. She enjoys the sensation in the air, hoping that maybe, just maybe, with the realm restored she'll regain her powers. That she too will have wings that allow her to soar through the skies. They reach the expansive lagoon, and before Rory dives down, Freya covers Flora in the cloak still draping her body. Knowing her cat's dislike for water, Freya still has so many questions about Flora, of how she could locate the amulet so quickly, how she could travel between realms. The thoughts quickly disappear as Freya sucks in a breath as ice-cold water envelopes her. Rory's wings plummet them toward the underwater cave, and they tumble through the entrance. Their cloaks drip, heavy from the absorbed water, though not nearly as heavy as the weight of the oath pressing into them. Her friends and Rianne are already there. Merlin stands coolly near the fire, his eyes in a distant place, as if he's trying to piece something together. Lily looks defeated as she stares into the flames that Rory enchanted to keep burning even while he was gone. Daniel had an arm slung around her, his expression matching hers. Freya struggles to keep her expression hopeful, playing the part of a successful mission. They've found their amulet. She and Rory are supposed to assume, at least hope, they found the one they were searching for, even though they knew their searching would turn up fruitless. Freya reins in her sigh of relief that none of them are hurt, that at least Rianne hadn't turned on them in that way. Her eyes travel to Rianne, sitting on the bench opposite Daniel and Lily. She could be a statue carved out of stone for how still she sits. Her sapphire eyes, so unlike the burning red Freya witnessed in the memory, peers at them the moment they enter the cavern. Freya half expects her to say something, to ask a snide question to confirm they've found the amulet. Rory and Freya had argued about whether to announce that they found the human life source or not, in fear that Rianne would retaliate. But they didn't plan to give her enough time. There was a fear that possibly Merlin knew this whole time, knew that Rianne was the one to break the realms. But with his proof of loyalty, of breaking the bond, defeating Aaron, they hoped it meant he didn't. A new fear settles inside Freya as she looks to the handsome, stoic male that now points his amethyst eyes toward her. She knows she has to tell him that she made her choice, that the choice wasn't him. She quickly looks away from his gaze. She hadn't thought of what she was going to say, how she was going to form the words that he heard before. That once again Freya chose Rory. Time is the one thing Freya wants for so many things, and it's the one thing she doesn't have. Lily lifts her eyes from the fire, a brief glance in Rory and Freya's direction that dries their drenched clothes and hair easily. Freya shrugs off her cloak, and Flora leaps out of her arms and settles herself near the fire. Rory steps further in the cave and asks, "Did you find it?" His voice is tinged with hope and aloofness, even as he looks at their disheartened faces. He is a better actor than Freya. Lily slowly shakes her head. No, the words are brutal, so cold, it feels like a slap of ice hits Freya in the stomach. Freya forces herself closer to the fire, careful to keep her eyes away from Rianne, to not accidentally send an accusatory glance her way that would give away their newfound knowledge. Merlin snaps back to reality, shaking his head slightly as if to straighten out his scrambled thoughts. We searched everywhere. Every village, every castle, every forest. Nothing. Freya realizes how quickly they must have moved, how much her human abilities must slow them down if they're able to accomplish all of that in one day. Rory's look of surprise and worry reminds Freya that she's also supposed to look shocked at the disappointing news. They exchange a glance, a confirmation of what they feared, that Rianne is truly working against them. Freya carefully roams her eyes over them, an excuse to have a glance at Rianne, to check if that chain is still on her neck. It's there, dipping below her shirt, hiding what lay at the end of it. Freya nonchalantly looks away when she notices Rianne's eyes on her. With a voice of pure ice, Rianne asks, "I take it you both had better luck?" Without missing a beat, Rory announces that they found the amulet, telling of how Flora assisted in finding it at the last moment. Freya swears Rianne's eyes flick to the cat in anger, and Freya almost takes a protective step toward Flora, as if Rianne would lash out right there. But Rianne only clicks her tongue as Rory continues the story, ending with the present of them arriving at the cave. No mention or sign of spending last night together, the confessions they laid out for each other. They purposefully stand a healthy distance apart, and as Freya sits beside Lily, Rory takes a place near Merlin. Rory would tell Merlin if Freya asked him. An easy way out. Though Freya knows in her core that she should be the one to tell Merlin, to not allow the fear of confrontation stop her. Part of her wonders if Merlin already knows of her feelings, that the moment he led her to Aaron's study and put her in harm's way, this would happen, her growing apart from him. Even if he did guess Freya's feelings, the words still need to be said. Freya senses Rianne's hostile glare on her. She wills herself to not make the slightest acknowledgement to the amulet hidden in Freya's the high neckline of her shirt that she carefully chose from the in-between's trove of clothes. "What do we do now?" Lily asks, clear desperation in her voice. "We go back to the tree of curated, and I ask it where the amulet is," Freya replies confidently. "How do you know the tree will show you?" Rianne asks skeptically, glancing between Freya and Rory. Freya tries not to sound too confident, to make this appear as a last-ditch attempt at finding it. "I don't." Chapter 47, Crimson Truth. Freya hopes that her and Rory's performance is enough for Rianne to believe her as they once again fly over the forest. There wasn't a debate in the cave of who Freya would fly with when she instantly walked to Rory's outstretched arms. Another hint to Merlin of her feelings. One that he had noted with a silent glance and a twitch of his eyebrow, but nothing more. In Rory's arms it feels strange to think of him, but she needs to start planning what she'll say. How she'll explain to Merlin that her heart led her back to Rory. Even she still couldn't believe it. But, with the current situation of Rianne and the amulets, Freya isn't sure when the opportunity will arise for the conversation. She slides a hand over the amulet covered by her tunic to make sure of its safety, that it didn't disappear, as if Rianne somehow possesses a talent that could swipe it from her without Freya realizing. Her hand touches the stone, and the power that surges inside it, trapped in the containment of the stone. Rory glances at her, taking his eyes from the pathway through the trees for a moment. They don't dare mention the plan, discuss the amulet. Not with Rianne flanking behind them, potentially listening to every word. A chill rages through Freya thinking of Rianne's glowing crimson eyes in the memory she witnessed. The powerful mist diminished when the amulet formed and Rianne placed it around her neck. The amulet hums against Freya as if it could sense her thoughts, sense the twin amulet so close to her. Rianne's must be doing the same. Rory coasts over the clearing, and Freya winces as they begin their descent to the rocky ground below. The scent of death filling her nostrils, the rotting tree of cariat stark in the middle, reminding her of all that happened in the expanse of the clearing. Not just the breakage but being captured. Used for bait to kill Rory. Attempt to kill Rory, she reminds herself. Even so, she squeezes her hand pressed against him as a reminder that he's alive. He senses the pressure and raises an eyebrow at her touch as he lands. For a moment he doesn't set her on the ground. Opting to hold her closer, she leans into his touch. She wants to kiss him, to feel his lips press against hers like they did the night before. But she forces her urge to subside, if only for Merlin's sake. For the sake of appearances to all of her friends. Although she's sure Lily would be happy about it. No doubt proudly proclaiming that she's known their recoupling would occur from the start. As it turns out, she was right. Rory gives Freya a tender look. Are you ready to do this? She reluctantly untangles herself from his arms and gently touches her feet to the ground. As ready as I'll ever be. She lifts her head to the sky, where she can see the rest of their group dip toward the ground. The ashy dirt scatters as the four of them land gracefully, all physically stronger than the last time they left the clearing. But the memory of what happened haunts their faces. Playing the part of why they came back to the tree, Freya walks toward it. Not scared like the time before, of what the memories might bring. She's already seen far worse, felt far worse, than anything it could show her now. She won't be asking where the other amulet is. She'll be asking exactly how to reconnect them, to forge the bridge between the realms once again. The amulet seems to pulsate as she nears the tree, tugging her along a tether to it. She wonders how Rianne could manage to be so close to the tree without it pulling her in. Her hand reaches toward the dead trunk, and the intangible whisper of the tree flows through her mind. You're back. Freya nods, answering in her mind. I have the amulets. She swears a sense of peace, of gratefulness, emanates from the tree. She revealed it to you, the tree says. It knew this entire time that Rianne had the locket, that she would reveal when she was ready. Though it wasn't Rianne who revealed, but the memory from the ancient tree. You revealed it in my memory, Freya whispers back, slightly confused. Her hand pauses before she places it on the inky bark. A light laugh floats from the tree. She must be ready. Freya's brows crinkle, ready to ask more. But another pulse from the amulet around her neck reminds her that they don't have much time. Unsure of what will happen to the human realm without the life source there, Freya doesn't want to risk it. To risk being the cause of destruction. Like so many thought she was for the realms, the cause of the breakage. She rests her hand against the tree, and like before, it swallows her hand up. She senses what she must do. To intertwine the sister amulets, and place them within the tree, breaking the containment spell on the amulets of the powers. The tree's need for life, the urge to be once again with its full power, streams through Freya. There's another aspect to it that Freya feels but remains hidden. Not in what she must do to combine the tree, but in what will happen once she does. She tries to press further into the tree, to unveil the secret it keeps from her. But the tree goes silent, void of answers and whispering shadows. She unravels her hand from the trunk, and rests it at her chest on top of the amulet. This part of the plan won't be pleasant, and will be nearly impossible, potentially ending in unforgivable bloodshed depending on how Rianne reacts. But Freya forces herself to do it anyway. Turning from the tree, Freya tries not to notice Rory's stance. How he angles his body toward Rianne, already in response if she indeed attacks Freya like they're worried she will. Freya makes her face hard as steel, her voice as demanding as possible. She keeps her eyes steady on Rianne, who emanates equal iciness. Her eyes are pure glaciers. Rianne, give me the amulet. Freya wills herself to say with her hand outstretched to the rigid female who immediately narrows her eyes at Freya. Rianne stands tall, her expression showing nothing. Merlin whips his head to his sister and then to Freya. What are you talking about? We told you we couldn't find it. He questions, confusion lacing his tone. Freya keeps her eyes on Rianne as she states, you didn't find it because she's had it his whole time. Silence between all of them. She's the one who broke the realms in two. The only noise is one that escapes Lily's lips, a slight gasp at Freya's words. Merlin moves in front of Rianne, protecting her, and he does nothing to mask the anger in his face. The snarl at his lips. How dare? How long have you known? Rianne's venomous voice cuts Merlin off, leaving his half-formed defense to fall flat. He whips toward his sister, and Rianne cuts an unfaltering glare at him. She cocks her head, black strands of hair swishing as she does. I'm surprised you didn't figure it out, brother. The word brother comes out like knives on a chalkboard. Freya doesn't miss that Rianne's eyes aim at both Merlin and Rory. Merlin repositions himself, his back toward Freya now, altering who he's protecting. Possibly the first time he stood as an opponent to Rianne. You broke the realm. His head turns slightly, enough to keep his eyes on his sister while glancing in Freya's direction. Did you send her to the human realm? Rianne's sapphire eyes glinted, no remorse in them. Yes, I did. For what she did to Mother. Flames erupt around Rory, heat radiating off of them that Freya can feel from the small distance away from her. He stands beside Merlin, blocking Freya in case Rianne tries something. If she can send her to the human realm once before, possibly she can do it again. Fear tightens around Freya, thinking of being sent back, of losing her memories again. Rianne shrugs at both of them, mainly Rory, examining his flames. Always so theatrical, Rory. Her voice sounds slightly bored at his display of power. A sensation from the tree billows toward Freya, like a voice in the breeze, reminding her that Rianne is ready to reveal the truth to her, that the memory was proof of her intention, despite the opposite reflected in her words. Freya takes a step forward, intent on Rianne. Why did you send me there? Why break the link? Rianne adjusts her shoulders, shadows lining her eyes. I did it because you were the keeper of the realms, meant to preserve peace between fairies and humans. And that day a fairy slipped through your cracks and died. My mother. The emotion, the grief in the word, mother, clangs through Freya. Rory told her that Merlin's mother died the same day the realm broke, but didn't offer much else, when in fact that was the catalyst. For all they've endured, all that Freya's endured. She was the most important person in my life, Rianne continues. And the humans killed in her cold blood without reason, simply for being a fairy. And you did nothing. Even in her rage, in the grief that roars underneath, Rianne's voice is as freezing and unrelenting as the hollowness of the clearing, the chill of death and loss. Softly, Merlin whispers, that wasn't Freya's fault and you know it. She cuts her eyes to Merlin, considering his words. Possibly. But back then all I could do was blame her. When our mother was murdered. She shifts, pursing her lips as if reassessing the words that are about to come out. Rianne looks each one of them in the eye, and raises her chin, not ready to fully show her vulnerability, the hurt that has raged inside her since her mother's death. When she was murdered, the powers locked inside of me were released. I couldn't control the anger, and Freya was the easiest person to take it out on, the realm included. Her eyes linger on the tree with a burning hatred deeper than Rory's flames. She shifts her gaze back to Freya. I suppose we're not so different after all. Freya asks the question she's been wondering since the moment she met Rianne. What powers do you have? A smile creeps on her lips, dangerous and taunting. If you saw me in this clearing that day, then you already know. Merlin and I have the same mother, but not the same father. She pauses as if waiting for the puzzle pieces to click together. The wheels turn in Freya's mind. The ruby eyes, the red mist, the black flames. Freya starts. You're Aaron's daughter, Rianne finishes. Chapter 48, The Clearing's Visitor. The entire clearing goes still at Rianne's announcement. Shock litters Lily and Daniel's face, staring at her as if she's a complete stranger. In a way, Freya supposes Rianne is hiding her true self for all of these years, locked inside a prison of pretending to be someone else. The iciness, the anger that rages inside Freya, that rages against Rianne, melts. But then Freya sees Rory freeze. His back to her, still in a position to protect her, but his flames extinguish. His shoulders slump, and Freya takes the final steps to close the gap between them. Standing beside him, she places a comforting hand on his back as she searches his eyes, forgetting entirely that Merlin is right there next to her. Rory's eyes are fixed on Rianne. Hers are a mirror to his. Rory's face crumples slightly, his brows knit together. You're my half-sister? Older half-sister, yes. Rianne confirms with the same calmness that alerts an incoming storm. Your eyes, they're sapphire. Keeler's eyes. Rory continues, rambling almost, trying to make sense of it. Freya keeps her hand on him, as if she can help hold him together by that simple touch. She hopes it's enough. Rianne's eyes flicker toward Merlin, and Rory follows her gaze, as does Freya's. It clicks, the allures Merlin casts. Of course he could cast one on Rianne. Rianne had said the first time she met Freya that she could always see through his allures. Freya assumed it was due to being siblings. Perhaps it was the fact that Rianne's eyes are an allure as well, possibly a power that Merlin granted her. They wait for Merlin to say something, anything. He stares back. A silent plea for understanding stretches across his face. Then he glances at Freya's hand on Rory's back. Noticing their closeness, Freya's breath catches but her stance remains firm. Unbearable moments of silence, and then, I didn't find out that Aaron was her father until our mother passed. You've kept it from me all these years? Rory asks quietly. This hurt him in a different way than when Merlin led Freya to Aaron. That angered him, made him protective. But keeping this from him, keeping his sister from him, this pains him. I couldn't tell you Merlin trails off at a loss for words. That helpless look for Rory to understand, to see through the lies, the deception, to forgive him. Rianne cuts in. I forbade him from telling anyone. My mother cast a spell on me the moment I was born with garnet eyes. Realizing whose child I belonged to, she knew the danger of having an illegitimate child in our family, especially one that belonged to the king of our court. Back then fairies weren't forgiving. Neither was Aaron, considering his true firstborn was out of wedlock, and a girl. Rianne's nostrils flared when she said his name. She continues. My mother locked away my powers inside of me, and tainted my eyes sapphire like hers so that my powers wouldn't be visible. She made sure to copy her own color, healer's eyes. Not amethyst, so that when my powers never came in, it wouldn't be as noticeable. She smiles wryly. I had the pleasure of being a disappointment to two fathers. That's why she never offered to assist in healing, even when Merlin's leg was shattered. She couldn't do anything to help him. Something clicks in Freya's mind. Your powers are locked away? How did you break the link, access them? Part of her wanting to know exactly what happened in the clearing that day, but also, if Rianne knew how to access her powers locked inside of her, maybe she knew how Freya could access hers. Rianne arches a brow as if realizing why Freya is asking. When my mother died, her allure disappeared as well, leaving years of unused, untrained power to release inside of me. I wanted to punish you, punish the realm for her death. But I also couldn't control the magnitude of it. Only when... She stops herself. Only when what? Freya demands. Rianne's jaw clenches. Only when the realm broke and the amulets formed, my power was taken with it. Trapped inside along with the realm's power. The only sign of them remaining was the color of my eyes. Those eyes roam over Freya, looking her up and down, then rest on where the emerald amulet lay beneath her shirt, close to her heart, as if she can sense the location of it. I'm assuming that's what happened to yours as well, Rianne notes. Freya's heart thunders, sensing the power of the amulet, as if in confirmation of Rianne's claim. Rory asks the question that's on her mind. But some of her powers remained. How? Rianne's face twists into a mixture of disgust and respect. The realm has always taken a liking to Freya. Perhaps it allowed her to keep some. I was never granted such luck. The realm, the amulets. The urgency in their mission returns to Freya, and she takes her hand from Rory's back and walks closer to Rianne, gently as if approaching a wounded animal. Please give me the amulet, Freya urges, a hand outstretched. A flicker of possibility flashes on Rianne's face, considering it. Her hand reaches toward the chain, the ruby stone that Freya knows hides behind her shirt. Rianne lifts her chin, considering. No. No. Freya nearly shouts, the civility, the trepidation in her gone. But the humans, without the life source, they'll. A thundering crack from the trees halts Freya's fervent statement, and all of them whip their heads to the source of the sound beyond the treeline as a figure emerges. Alone, but with a crimson glow that makes the dead clearing seem like a haven of hellfire. The hatred, the rage in each step the figure took, power rippling around him. Aaron steps through the final line of trees, a primal grin on his face. Rory launches himself in front of Freya, his flames already erupting, darker than the golden amber ones. Angier than those. Rianne stares Aaron dead in the eyes, keeping her chin high. Well, it seems you are stupid enough to return. Aaron sneers in a smug, bitter voice. In a flash he stands mere yards from them, his arms crossed on his chest. A clear sign that he's not afraid of the six fae in front of him, the six fae that wants to destroy him. Aaron's eyes dance from Rory then land on Merlin. I see you've gone downhill without the bond. You could have been powerful if you stayed with me. Mist dark as night forms around Merlin. Breaking that bond was the single best day of my life. Aaron's eyes darken. Pretty dull life then. His eyes shift and a feral glimmer forms in his eyes. Hello, Freya. I've been looking for you. Seems you stole my sorry excuse of a son from me. Freya's crack of power kindles inside her at the insult toward Rory. Her fists clench into each other. She wills her voice to sound like ice, mimicking Rianne's ability. Seems the sorry excuse for a father has finally decided he wants to be killed. Aaron's eyebrows shot up at her threat, amused at the thought of her killing him. Get your girl in line, Rory. Threats that can't be kept are embarrassing. With the shift of his attention, Freya looks to Rianne, desperation in her eyes, to hand over the amulet. Rianne doesn't return her gaze, her eyes focused on Aaron. Merlin's mist flickers, and tendrils of it float toward Aaron, but then they stop, as if they hit a blockade. Aaron laughs. Oh Merlin, I thought we were smarter than this. Your mist won't reach me, not with the wards I have in place to expel a glamour. This isn't good. Without Merlin's ability to glamour, to hide them in the night long enough to convince Rianne to give up the amulet, it only left their fighting to be what stands between Arion and the amulets. The entire power of the realm will be in his hand if they lose. Aaron moves in closer. All of you are traitors, and you must bear the consequence of traitors. You can either die swiftly, or not. His eyes twinkle, like he's already picturing the longer, grueling way. We're not the ones dying today. Rory grits through his teeth. Another low laugh, more sinister this time, from Aaron. I hoped you would say that. And flames erupt from him, barreling toward Freya. Rory barely has enough time to knock her out of the way, both of them smashing into the ground. You love her too much, Aaron calls out. That's always been your weakness. A tendril of his power, those phantom talons stretch toward Merlin. He escapes the sharp claws barely. A drip of red blood on his arm where the shadow reached. Rory leaps from the ground, power gleaming around him. The light of the sun dancing off him, harnessing the midsummer power he gleaned in full force. Freya stands, watching Rory, and then notices a flicker of movement from Rianne. Unsheathing that twisted dagger, she pierced into the hearts of Fae in the same clearing. Rianne's mouth twists into a snarl and she stealthily bounds toward Aaron. Freya watches in horror as Aaron easily whirls toward her. His ruby mist, the same power as Rianne that is locked inside the amulet strung around her neck, stretches toward her. Without thinking, without realizing what she's doing, Freya runs in front of Rianne. Power explodes inside her, not just her own but from the realm, the solar and lunar, just like when she healed Rory. She imagines a shield covering them. A block of her own emerald mist twisting with shadows of vines materializes and protects them. For a moment Freya holds her stance but feels the power waning. Hoping maybe this would be enough for Rianne to offer the necklace. Freya twists a free hand behind her, toward Rianne, palm open. Freya keeps her face still, unreadable, as metal and polished stone slides into her hand. The lithe touch of Rianne's hand lingering in the transfer. Already, Freya can feel the force of the ruby amulet. Chapter 49, The Realm's Queen. Freya clasps her hand around the ruby amulet, keeping any sign of it hidden from Aaron, who growls in anger at her deflection of his attack. Without looking behind her to Rianne, Freya commands, "Run!" She hears Rianne's footsteps take off, and Freya fuses the distraction to make a break for the tree of curated. She hopes that Rory will pick up on her plan and stall Aaron long enough for her to reach the tree. As she runs, Freya concentrates to keep the shield of emerald mist in place, protecting her. Darkness nips and fights through the shield. Hunger in the shadows that want to leech her power, her life from her. She can feel Aaron's hate in his power, the rage that engulfs him. A blast of power breaks through the shield, and it knocks the wind out of Freya, sending her sharply face first into the hard ground. She skids and the small sharp rocks littering the earth slice against her face. The amulet tumbles from her hand upon the impact, revealing itself to Aaron, the ruby stone glinting in the sunlight. Her entire body tensed, and she lifts her eyes from the amulet long enough to place where Aaron stands. His burning eyes fixate on the amulet. A feral grin splays across his face. The earth quakes underneath Freya as she watches Aaron vanish in horror, moving too quickly for her eyes to keep up with. Freya scrambles wildly toward the amulet, half standing, half crawling toward it. She senses the force of his power before she sees him. Aaron stands over the amulet, reaching down to grab it. Freya grasps for it mere inches away, but Aaron is closer, his fingers about to grab hold of it. A wall of black flames surges in front of Aaron. Rory is in front of him in a moment, holding a barrier between Aaron and the amulet. Aaron and Freya. She doesn't hesitate. Doesn't watch as Aaron's shadowed talons attempt to thrash around the impenetrable flames. Freya picks up the amulet and sprints to the tree, the familiar whisper of it beckoning her with every step, longing to be whole again. She reaches the rotten roots when she hears a thunderous clang of matched strength rumble around her. A quick glance confirms Aaron broke through Rory's line of defense. Flames twist around each other. Flashes of emerald and crimson ricochet as Rory battles Aaron. Aaron's fiery eyes pierce Freya's, going wild as he sees her so close to the tree. He lashes out another fury of mist at Rory, this time meeting its mark, and Rory lands on the ground. In that moment of impact, Aaron closes in on Freya. She turns back to the tree of curated, knowing she doesn't have time. She snatches the emerald amulet from her neck, not caring that the chain breaks. She holds both amulets in her shaking hands, piecing them together. They forge together, glowing bright. Rough, fierce hands pull at her shoulders and she's nearly yanked away. She stretches her hand to the bark, the conjoined amulets tucked tightly in her fist. A wrap of his mist clamps hard around her wrist, the hand holding the amulets. She opens her free hand below and drops the amulets into the other, forcing it forward as the shadow pulls her back. Fighting it, she stretches out her free arm, and it feels like she's going to be ripped in two, the same as she felt in the breakage of the realm. Gritting her teeth, she forces her hand forward and plunges the life sources into the heart of the tree of curated. A blinding light paired with a deafening boom echoes throughout the clearing, through the entire realm. A violent shake of the earth, as if reality is being altered, lands Freya flat on the ground, her arms still connected to the tree. The crack inside her fully unleashes an overwhelming power inside Freya. The clearing alters in front of her. The deathly black covering the tree's bark unfurls. In its wake, starting at the roots and snaking up, the white bark she's seen only in her memories returns. Still connected to the tree, Freya's transported into the liminal space, suspended between the two realms. She watches, feeling every moment, as the broken realms converge into each other, becoming one. Energy different from her own courses through her. Barely able to control it, to wield the sheer might of it, Freya is thrust out of the vision and into the clearing. Her hand slides out of the tree, trembling. The ripping inside her, the tear of Aaron pulling her back, lessens as a glowing haze of emerald and white seethes from Freya, extinguishing Aaron's grip on her. The tree bestows another gift. Freya's forgotten memories flood through her, spent as human and fae. They flash through her mind so quickly she can barely keep up. Her newfound power encircles her, and she feels a strange sensation in her back, a weight on them. She opens her eyes, not realizing how tightly they've been shut with the pouring of memories. She catches a glimpse of the glimmering emerald wings spread out behind her. Standing taller, Freya turns from the tree and spreads her wings behind her in a warning. Her face is cold as stone as she looks at Aaron, who has taken a few steps back. His crimson mist shadowing him. Freya doesn't falter her gaze, not yet allowing herself to look at the life returning to the clearing. She lifts her chin as Aaron takes her in, her wings and the rippling power encompassing her. Freya is ready to strike but stops as she senses another great power and lifts her gaze to locate the source. Aaron does the same and they simultaneously see her. Rian, fierce as death, her eyes glowing crimson with black flames around her. A red glow casting off her as she stalks toward Aaron, vanishing in one step, and the other appearing directly in front of him. Rian smiles cruelly, tilting her head. She looks otherworldly as she raises that twisted dagger. Aaron stumbles in shock, seeing that her power is so similar to his own. Hello, father. Rian clips with a weight of all the lashes and wounds he's inflicted upon her, Merlin and Rory, the entirety of those in the realm. Quickly, Aaron raises a hand to strike, but Rian catches it. She digs the knife into Aaron's heart and twists, a smile on her face the entire time. Rory, rasping for breath from the blow he endured moments ago, appears next to her. She lifts her hand from the knife and pulls it out. Aaron collapses to his knees, and Rian offers the dagger to Rory. He wraps his hand around the knife. His whisper low and deep, "This is for my mother," as he shoves the dagger back into Aaron, the exact spot Rian made her mark. A shudder careens across the land. Aaron's dead eyes are wide, unmoving, unwavering at his two children that killed him. A different flow of power appears around Rian's. Ruby mist swirls and forms a crown around Rian's head, the now vacant throne finding its rightful heir. Freya stares at Rian's crown, and then she embraces the new power coursing through her own body. The memories settle inside her, as if they've never left. Laughing with Lily kissing Rory, her parents. Her fae vision opens, revealing the true splendor of the fairy realm. The enhanced colors that glimmer softly in the sun. From the once barren ground, jade grass blooms. Mushrooms and flowers grow with each blade. Leaves flood out of the scraggly branches of the tree of curated. The air is richer, livelier than before. Like magic lives in each gust of breeze. In every particle of the realm new life breathes. Freya spreads her wings behind her once more, testing the weight of them against her back. Strange and unusual, heavy, not unlike the weight of the oath still pressing down on her. lighter than the before as the realm once again blooms with the balance of the tree. Freya looks at Rory and stares at his unwavering beauty. Her widened vision reveals a glow around him, different from that she's seen before. Not of his power but of his essence. He makes eye contact with her, and she watches his expression as he takes her in, her full-face self. Freya sees him stare first at her ears, and she lifts a hand to them. She starts as she feels the pointed ends of them. She shifts her eyes from Rory's intense gaze the same time as he does, turning their focus upon their new crowned queen. The hazy crown swirls on her head, Rianne's chin held high. The body of her absent father, of Rory's abusive one, lay at her feet. The twisted dagger still in it, the handle glinting in the rejuvenated sunlight. Freya takes a step toward Rianne. Her eyes resemble gleaming rubies, the same shade of the amulet, pierce into Freya. A tentativeness in Rianne's eyes makes Freya say, "Thank you for the amulet, for deciding to trust her." Rianne's mouth tightens. "It shouldn't have taken me so long. I shouldn't have taken my grief out on you, Freya." She straightens her shoulders, sincerity and remorse ringing through Rianne's expression, her voice enough to make the words stick in Freya's throat. She manages to say, "What's done is done." And in her heart, Freya knows she'll forgive Rianne. Maybe not that day, not that moment, but she knows her actions were out of fear, out of loss and grief, not solely cruelty, not like Aaron. Rianne looks at the others gathered around her. Lily's mouth is drawn into a tight line as she looks upon Rianne's crown. The gash on Merlin's arm is already healing. Aaron's dead. His magic is dead. He won't hurt anyone ever again. Freya reminds herself. He won't be able to hurt Rory again. She finds a hint of a smile on her face, surprised at it just as much as the others. Rory takes a place next to Freya and studies Rianne. Freya wonders if he's angry that after his entire life of believing, he would be next in line to be king, but isn't. He opens his mouth but Rianne lifts a slender finger, stopping him. "I know what all of you must think of me, but I am not Aaron, and I never will be." Rory's expression hardens. "How can we trust you to not break the realms again? To not hurt Freya? You know as well as I what Aaron would have done to the human realm if he had access to it," Rianne states calmly, but there's a slight tremble to her voice that Freya notes. "I blame the humans for my mother's death, but those who killed her died long ago, and our kind has been hurting without the balance of the tree." It seems difficult for her to admit the words, the harm she's caused. She looks to all of them now. "I swear to all of you that I will rule fairly and without cruelty." "The realm chose you," Merlin breathes, his eyes on his sister's crown, pride glittering in his eyes before they darken. Merlin forms his words carefully. "Even so, the court might not want to accept you as queen." Rianne stiffens, turning to her brother. "Half-brother. They have looked down on me for centuries, thinking that I am weak. I'll show them that they were wrong, but I will not force loyalty upon them. I want their trust, not their fear." Rianne's eyes swivel to Rory. "Besides, I'll have their beloved prince to help me." Her normal sarcastic bite is light. Instead, the words act as a truce, the first extension of a hand toward Rory, to help her lead the realm. Rory steps forward, words failing him for once. He swiftly nods at Rianne, accepting her request. Freya studies the female she's disliked from the moment she met her during Solstice, realizing that indeed they did have more in common than she realized. Two sides of the same coin, the realm holding a piece of both of them. "It will take a while for the court to trust all of us, especially when they hear of Arion's death. We must stand as a united front," Freya says, her words steady. Rianne is the first to nod in agreement. The others, Freya's friends, swear by it as well. A pledge to each other, to get through what awaits in the court, awaits in the future, together. Rory and Rianne look down at Aaron's body as their flames turn his body to nothing but ash that scatters into the wind, the last trace of his presence disappearing entirely. Chapter 50. The Secret Wedding. Freya looks at each of her friends, at Rory next to her. She curves her hand into his, sharing the moment with him. The freedom from his father, of being trapped in a life he didn't want. Hope glistens in his eyes. She wonders what will change as they return to the court and piece together the realm. Reflecting on how much has changed already. Even with the thought, Freya feels hopeful, happy. As one they leap into the sky, their wings carrying them. Freya soars next to Rory, feeling the wind flow past her wings. Rusty and first, then gaining confidence in her flight. Smiling the entire way. It had been a month since they flew into court with Rianne's crown still swirling around her head. They had first stopped at the cavern to gather Flora, and for Lily to assist lingering wounds. She healed Merlin and Freya tended to Rory. sore from the blast Aaron threw at him, but nothing compared to what he'd endured in the past. The night they arrived at the castle, they were instantly met with a frenzy of villagers and court members. They had felt the change in power. The proof of it sat upon Rianne's head. They were reluctant at first, they still were. But over the weeks, Rianne was determined to prove to everyone she was a just queen, capable and trustworthy of ruling the realm and the Fae in it. The village was hurting after Aaron unleashed his rage again on the innocent villagers after Merlin broke the bond, and they all assisted in rebuilding. Lily and Freya went door to door the night they returned, not resting until everyone was healed. Freya knew the healing of the internal wounds would take longer, but it was a start. On the way back to the castle from the outskirts of the village, Lily and Freya strolled through the castle garden, basked in moonlight, brighter than the nights Freya had spent there before. Lily hesitantly inquired, "I noticed you and Rory." Her voice held no judgment in it. "Did something happen between you two?" Freya couldn't help the smile that came to her lips as she told Lily everything. Or nearly everything, sparing the specifics of their shared night together. Freya told of how she almost laughed out loud when she finally accepted her feelings, which made Lily snort in response. Lily was excited for her as Freya expected, but her doe-like eyes faltered in the joy for her friend. "What about Merlin? Have you told him?" The look on Freya's face had clearly stated a firm no, and Lily helped her think of ways to explain to soften the blow. The next day Freya had sought him out. She turned down a corridor hallway, mentally preparing herself for when she would see him, almost not noticing him, standing at the end of the hallway. His eyes were already wary as he looked at her. She paused, staring back at him. For a moment her feet didn't budge. Freya reminded herself that she needed to do this and swiftly stepped into motion. Halting in front of him, she opened her mouth and tried to force the words out. Tried. She had practiced them all morning, pacing in her room, preparing herself for every outcome. They stuck in her throat, unable to breach her lips. Merlin raised his eyebrows slightly, waiting for her to speak, to say out loud what he already knows, the knowledge of it written in the distant look in his eyes. She was braver than this. She's faced situations far more dangerous than this. Freya opened her mouth again, willing the words to come out. "Merlin, I need to talk." He cut her off, his eyes glancing at the wall. "Anywhere but her eyes. If you're here to tell me you chose Rory, I already know." "How do you know?" Freya rasped out. Perhaps she made it too obvious, the signs clear as day in front of him. A dark chuckle from Merlin. It wasn't difficult to notice. He grazed his eyes back to hers, finally making contact. "So it's true then. You and Rory." It wasn't bitterness in his voice, but resignation. Freya's brows bunched together, a frown on her lips. A sadness swam in her, not due to who she chose, sad that it hurt someone in the process. That it hurt Merlin. "Yes, it's true. I didn't know my feelings. I didn't fully realize until the in-between." He nodded his head, and the protective wall of apathy cracked slightly in his eyes. His shoulders tensed, and Freya instinctively reached out a hand, gently placing it on his shoulder. "I want you to be happy," she whispered. Merlin didn't take his amethyst eyes off of her, glowing violet like the first time she saw them. His voice was sure and deep. "I want you to be happy too." That afternoon Merlin announced that after peace was more tangible between the realms and when he knew Rianne would be safe, that he would be leaving. He wanted to travel between both realms, and step away from the castle where he was forced into the bond with Aaron for centuries, to escape the memories of that imprisonment. Freya had wanted to protest that, to tell him that he was welcome to stay. But she understood his reasoning. It didn't have to do entirely with her, but for his own personal freedom, his own happiness, to leave behind what he's endured under Aaron. And now, his belongings were packed and waiting for him, ready to leave the moment after the wedding. Freya and Rory's wedding was happening that afternoon. Freya initially insisted that he didn't have to come if he didn't want to, but Merlin persisted. He wanted to see her happy, to see Rory happy. He wouldn't miss their wedding, despite the pain it might cause him. It is going to be the first event to welcome guests from both realms. An attempt at mending the broken relationship between the two. She's not sure if any will show up. With the portals reopened, the first weeks back were spent calming humans who accidentally ventured through them. Then they spread the word of fairies, of the possibility to walk between the two worlds. The whispers were laced with a potion from Merlin so that whoever heard the words knew it was true. As Lily helps Freya into her wedding gown, Freya wears her mother's wedding dress, the one she unknowingly wore the day she agreed to the oath. But she had asked Lily to send it to her dressmaker to redesign. refashion it so that it too was a mix of the old and the new, just like Freya. Remnants of her mother's in the sleeves, the lace of the bodice, the fabric of the skirt. Freya kept all of the unused parts of the dress, cherishing them. The last remnant of her mom. Freya had already flipped through the memories of her childhood, of her parents, the compassion in her mom, the steadiness of her father, both kind and loving. Her heart aches for them, wanting them to be there on her wedding day. Rory was there for her through it all. As she sorted through her memories and got used to her fey body, comforting and kind and feeling like home, a place to be held, to be seen for who she was and is now. Lily fastens the last button on her dress and grins. She takes a step back to admire her handiwork, painting Freya's face with rouge on her lips and cheeks, fastening the flower crown that replaced a veil, a difference Freya noted in fey versus human traditions. I can't believe this is happening, Lily smiles, glee in every corner of her face, shimmering in her sapphire eyes. Freya huffs a laugh. I can't either. Marrying Rory, although they are already wed. Freya runs her finger over the slim band already on her ring finger. With the need to make good on their oath, Rory and Freya had slipped out one morning in the first few days after arriving back. They chose a glen in the woods with a stream that ran nearby. A new place for both of them, not tainted by the memories of the past, of all that had happened. And there, in the middle of the lush forest, Rory and Freya made a new promise to each other. They spoke the words of the fey vows, first in an ancient language that Freya had to repeat carefully after Rory, and then in their own tongue, so Freya could understand the meaning of the words. I promise to love thee wholly and completely without restraint, in sickness and in health, in plenty and in poverty, in life and beyond, where we shall meet, remember and love again. I shall not seek to change thee in any way. I shall respect thee, thy people, and thy ways as I respect myself. Rory cupped his hands around her cheeks the moment the last word was spoken. I love you, Freya, and I will love you until the end of my days. She reached a hand to his shoulder, the other pressed against his cheek. I love you, Rory, until the end of my days. She pressed her lips against his, the vow settling in place, passionate and tender all in one. They stayed in that moment for what felt like hours pressed against each other, feeling the peace of being together, until dusk arrived and they went into the castle to spend their first wedding night together. One that didn't involve sleep of any sort, as they spent the moonlit hours intertwined as one. Lily's delicate hand on Freya's back, a touch of comfort, brings Freya back to reality. Freya beams at her friend, wrapping her in her arms. Thank you, Lily, for everything. There is nothing to thank, Freya. I should be thanking you, Lily murmurs, holding Freya tight in the embrace, only pulling apart when the chatter of guests from the gardens below wafted through the open window. They walk side by side through the castle, and out to the gardens. Lily gives her one last smile, one last squeeze of her hand, before joining Daniel at the front of the throngs of fairies. And to her surprise and joy, Freya notices a few humans in the mix. Not many, but a start. Freya walks behind the crowd, centering herself to where the pathway to Rory is. Naturally, without missing a beat, the fairies and humans alike part down the middle. Freya doesn't look anywhere else other than Rory as she walks down the aisle, with her held head high. She stands underneath the marvelous wreath of ivy and white jasmine flowers, turning toward Rory. His emerald eyes dance in delight at her, at the dress that cascades elegantly down her body. He takes both of his hands in his, and they repeat the same vows they spoke privately weeks before, only now, in front of their friends, their court, their queen. Their kiss is met with bated breath from the watching eyes, and as they turn to stand before them as music flows through the gardens, the true sign of a fey wedding of celebration begins. Freya smiles wide. Rory's arm slings easily around her, and she reaches on her tiptoes for one more kiss, knowing that even with eternity together, she'll never tire of his touch.